So first of all, welcome to the Education Post. And for the audience, I want to tell them I got the honor to host Professor Dr. Vibhuti Sachdev, the Dean and Director of GITAM School of Architecture. So your extensive background is pretty well, and with diverse role, including the lecturer of History of Arts at University of Sussex and the Director of UID at GD Goenka University, and contributions such as restoring the Jal Mahal in Jaipur has left a lasting mark. And all of your work are truly inspiring. Thank you for joining us. So I'd like to start with my first question. Like your academic journey from studying at the renowned School of Planning and Architecture in New Delhi to obtaining a PhD in architectural theory at the prestigious School of Oriental and African Studies in London is really impressive. I just like to know how your experience have influenced your philosophy in architectural education.
Okay. Thank you for having me. For that one needs to reflect on how research and teaching helps you grow as a person. So when you do a PhD, it's a deep dive into a subject that teaches you discipline, that teaches you rigor, that teaches you also, uh, most importantly, it breaks down your assumptions and biases. That's what good research should do. So you question all your biases, you question all your assumptions to actually in the end evolve your mind. And that is what higher education at the PhD level, which is the highest degree, ought to do for everybody, to contribute to the evolution of the mind of the person. And that rigor, that deep dive was a very important phase in my life that contributed directly to how I teach, how I taught, and how I now do academic leadership. My approach is therefore very rigorous. I always, as a researcher, you're always putting yourself in other people's shoes, and as architects, you're also doing that because you're designing for other people. So you have to consciously keep putting yourself in other person's shoes, and students across ages, to understand where they are coming from, to relate to their needs empathetically. You have to consciously do that. So research teaches you to do that. Architecture teaches you to do that. So it was a natural process for me, and I think teaching in Sussex also showed me, because in terms of digitization of education, they were ahead. I'm talking about uh, 2000, 1999, 2000 to till 2004. Um, it showed me how various systems and processes contribute to that rigor in teaching, and actually raise accountability of the education process. So I also learned that, how what a student centric approach is, that education learning is not a one way broadcast. You have to, it's an interactive process. So you have to also see how much of what you're broadcasting is actually being caught by the student or not. So you have to have systems and processes to identify the gaps, or identify, how the education process is being received by the student. Otherwise, it becomes Chinese whisper, no? So you say something and the student gets something, and in the end, it's completely different from what you meant.
Definitely.
So in order to avoid that, there has to be some conscious methods, which I learned from. Now, when I say I learned from UK, I don't mean I just kind of absorbed it and therefore applied it. I also could see the gaps in those, dependent on what the system throws at you.
Definitely. As you
And
mentioned,
and
yes, ma'am.
there can be too much digitization and too much dependency on data, and which takes you away from that emotional connect you have to have with your students. And that's why education is different from, say, retail. I mean, education as a practice, as a business, or as a, as an industry, is very, very different from retail, because there is so much at stake. You're dealing with young minds, you're dealing with the future generation. You can actually, and you will remember, Prabhav, as a student, a good teacher can make you like that subject for life, and a
Definitely.
bad teacher can ruin it. There would be a year when you love maths, there would be a year you will hate history because of the teacher. So to understand, that's why it's called a noble profession, you see. So because you are actually shaping the future generation in such deep ways that you have to bear that responsibility. So it's a very challenging, very enriching, and you evolve as a person. That's what you get out of teaching.
Definitely. As you mentioned about a lot of things that a student should have about research, about their practice, about their mentality, everything you mentioned over here. So, with my next question, in the same context, with your career span, you with your career in research, lecturing, including all the important roles, especially as a consultant of restoration of the journal. So, how do you balance the theoretical knowledge and the practical insights in your approach to teaching architecture? Like, how much important is the practical learning apart from the theoretical learning?
I consciously break down the divide between theory and practice in my mind. If theory is not practical, then it's not of no use to you. And if practice is without theory, without reflecting, without philosophizing, or without actually any critical thinking, then it becomes very shallow. It becomes almost dangerous as a practice if you're not thinking about what you're doing. So ideally, there can't be a separation between the two, because when you're learning theoretical concepts, you're also thinking about how to apply those. And when you're practicing, you're also thinking about the foundational concepts of your practice. So in reality, they're not separate. To make it easier to learn, perhaps they are separated. But I think it would be useful if they come together in more enriching ways than it is done today. I mean, I think the separation is artificial. The separation needs to break down.
So, industry academia collaboration. There's a concept in run nowadays, industry academia collaboration. As UGC has also passed a thing that's POP, professor of practice. They are looking for industry people to teach. So that's a kind of different kind of aspect that is going to start in the colleges in across the country. So, but some argue that there is a lack of industry collaboration in architecture education, um, leading to potential mismatch between academic training and industry needs. So, how can the partnership between educational institution and the architectural industry be strengthened to ensure a better alignment?
The relationship between industry and education is very problematic at the moment because of this, again, separation that has been brought in by the modernistic approach of, polarizing everything into two bits: good, bad, white, dark, white, black. Industry education, one good, one bad. And also, it is problematic because it assumes that in the business of education, we are actually exist to serve the industry. We are in the service of industry to produce students who will then cater to industry. So it's a one-way process. I think it's wrong. Rather than asking, is education, are our students industry ready? We should be asking if the industry is education ready. Because education, by its very nature, is futuristic. Even when you teach history, you're teaching for the use of history in the future. So, education, students are way ahead from what the industry is doing at the moment, because their eyes are on the future. They are the future generation. They are the future architects. So how can we be behind industry? I don't understand that. I think again, this kind of we have to put our egos aside and come together as one team for the sake of the future generation of architects. That will probably take time because, as you know, construction industry is the biggest capital intensive industry in anywhere in the world. Definitely. There is huge money at stake. So
And day
therefore,
by day, this is growing actually.
it is growing, and we are developing. It's growing. We are developing our infrastructure, and there is a lot of money involved. So therefore, there's a direct connection between money and ego. No, so so there is that thing. But industry also has to bear the responsibility of being more reflective, being more being thinkers as well. And I think it will happen. It is, there are some companies who for example, bring on board student competitions, take student advice, want to make the student voice more vocal. So that is happening in bits, but not enough. I think we need to kind of collaborate in a more kind of with mutual respect. At the moment, there are people in the industry who look down upon education, and who look down upon architects in education. So when I say, I'm an architect, I'm not a half an architect because I'm in education. My field of practice is education. Somebody's field of practice might be projects. My field of practice is education. And I will go to the extent of saying that even if you're an architect and you choose to be a homemaker at home, you're still practicing architecture.
Definitely.
Because education doesn't leave you. And architectural education is super special because it teaches you how to stay in this, coexist in the world, to be sensitive to other human beings, because you have to interact with clients, how to respect the environment, how to do all the things that a sensitive human being will do. So regardless of what your canvas is, you will always be paint a different picture because you're an architect, compared to other professions. I mean, they will also paint a different picture.
So basically, your views on POP is totally different from what others think. Like the professor of practice is in my opinion, it's a great thing. It's a great initiative for the UGC taken by UGC. So that industry people directly connect with those students to teach a better way.
Again, Prabhav, there is an issue there because, teaching now is not an ad hoc time pass profession. Teaching is a serious profession. And it has serious consequences on human beings.
Totally agree.
So to say that, teaching is, you can be an excellent surgeon, but same person can be a terrible teacher. You can be excellent at uh, performing a heart surgery, but teaching heart surgery is a different ballgame. Also, you see, we as teachers have to expose our students to things that we may not personally agree with, because we should not let our biases influence our teaching. You have to be larger than practice in order to do that. The other thing I've noticed is that what is the role of an educational institution is to give students a good foundation, a good foundation as a human being, as a citizen of this country. Also to make that student an architect, thinking, caring architect. Now, for that, we teach ethics, we teach good practices, we teach 90% of those are the first things get dropped when they graduate. Now, whose fault is that? We teach all those things in college: how to respect environment, how to be sensitive to people, how to feel for communities, what is it, ethics in practice. But how much of that the industry allows to nurtures in students? Isn't that, I mean, who's corrupting whom?
So basically, the foundation that you are teaching actually motivates the students to continue more. But when the foundation isn't good for them, the students won't get motivated and they don't want to pursue more about in this career field.
Nothing we teach is with the intention of it being bad for the student. Then it's not teaching.
No.
So
As you mentioned, like the foundation should be the most important thing for a student. That will
yeah,
motivate them. So like some teachers, they don't teach in that way that the students don't get the way they want to make it. So they don't get motivated and they want to discontinue this profession. So
Sure,
foundation
I
is the
think,
important thing.
yeah, and I think you're right. There are good doctors, bad doctors, there are good teachers, bad teachers. And also, I think we should have more rigorous um, teacher training programs for architecture teachers. That is completely missing. Um, People get into teaching by accident or by because that's the only thing they. Some do with passion, but still they don't have the training. So I think teaching professional courses is a is a craft. So you have to learn that craft. It doesn't automatically come in. You can't dream it up. You have to learn that craft, and you can, and I think that is an important thing because finding good faculty also is not easy.
Definitely. So basically, for my next question, like, and the architectural profession, it's increasingly being called upon to address the global challenges such as climate change and sustainable design. So, how is the architecture education in India adapting to instill a strong sense of environmental responsibility and innovation in its curriculum?
That's a very good question. I think, and that's a question that is important to think about anywhere in the world, especially more so in India. More so in India because we are a land of huge diversity. We have geographical diversity, we have social diversity, economic diversity, we have so many religions, worldviews, so many things. It's such a rich land, and therefore it should be possible to have diversity in architectural curriculum, so that there is a strong sense of context, there is a strong sense of community landscape. And I think if the students can be taught how to get under the skin of one ecosystem, they can handle any ecosystem in the world. But that ecosystem has to have all the layers of social and economic and geographical and climatic and cultural and all that, all those layers, if the curriculum allows. And I think it does. I mean, I think COA curriculum is about minimum standards. It's not about maximum standards. So it's up to the schools also to strive towards producing that excellence beyond the minimum. And I think COA does try very hard to allow colleges to develop their own USPs, to develop their own identity, because there is enough room where you can put in what you want to do, what you're good at, what your what your context demands. So, but more can be, always in any situation, more can be done, more improvement can be done, more tweaking, more refining, and that's a kind of ever evolving process. And I think and more people are feeling the value of that now.
So basically, as you mentioned about setting a room for the higher standards, getting a improvement for higher education, higher standards. So
Yeah.
the regulatory framework COA for architecture education in India has undergone the changes from over the years. So, what are your thoughts on the current accreditation process, and how do you see the room for improvement to ensure high standards of education currently in India? Actually.
Yeah, so I think in a that diversity of our land uh, is a unique asset we have within one political boundary. To have so much diversity is an asset and should be treated as an asset. And I think I would um, think of, and I do that in our curriculum, trying to innovate as well as much as possible to bring in the three C's according to me is context, community, and culture. That has to be put very consciously into the curriculum. And how I mean, and there are various ways of doing it to make students aware of the fact that no land is flat. Every land has history, every piece of land has history. And as architects, when you're designing on that land, you have to respect its past. If you don't carry your past forward, then it's not going to be good for any of us. We will not survive.
Definitely.
We have to carry our past with us, and professions that deal with land are, have to do that very, very consciously and proactively to respect the land they build on, to respect the vegetation, the culture, its history, the communities that have lived on that land in the past. It's not a flat drawing board. It's got a context. Everything has a context, and there are people involved. There are people living around it. So I think the phase of star architects, I think, thankfully, is over. Like in Indian cinema, the phase of great heroes is over. We used to have these
There were
big film stars.
millennial, the millennials era. There was Rajesh Khanna and all those, the superstars.
Amitabh Bachchan,
Amitabh
yeah,
Bachchan, Rajesh Khanna.
superstars. Yeah. Similarly, in architecture, we had these star architects. And now architecture is moving towards more community-based approach, more participatory, collaborative approach in design, where design is negotiated with. And I think we can learn a lot from practices all over the world. For example, if some new building is built in an area, there are RWA discussions that happen. I've seen that in UK because I've lived there for a long time. That citizens of the community will be called and asked, is this a good idea? What do you think about the design? The architect will present to the community that this is what we are planning to build. What do you think about it? And this mutual respect is built. It can't happen automatically. You have to respect people. People will then respect architects. So architects also, to some extent, have to climb down from their ivory tower and say, we reach out to the community, reach out to the citizens, and not be otherwise. At the moment, it's pretty alienated, the profession, right? But there are pockets of change you see in India, and which is very very motivating.
My next question is, I'm adding to a question, like how much important, like in this in this generation, how the artificial intelligence, virtual reality is growing, the technology is growing. How important, like I don't know whether the people of architecture in the architecture field, they use their own creativity for their work. So how much important is the use of AI and VR, like any other technologies, for their work? How much important? What are your views on that?
See, technology is, I mean, it depends on how you define technology. So when we say craft, the divide between, again, the high tech, low tech is artificial. Craft can be seen as low tech, but actually it is very high tech because it involves the mind. It involves certain codified systems that are so sophisticated. When a person weaves a carpet, it's mind blowing. I mean, the techniques and how the memory works and how it's codified, and it produces a brilliant pattern without drawings, without all these digital Excel sheets. It's all done in. So is that low tech? I don't think so. It's very, very high tech, and so technology is for our use. I mean, and we have to not be the slaves of technology. Technology is our slave, so to speak.
It's for the help. It's for the good thing.
It's for our benefit, and do we want to get blown by it, taken over by it? I don't think so. And I think human spirit is much larger than that. It will not be, I don't think it can die with AI. Of course, what we have to again exercise, which we have done in the past very consciously, to have points of resistance and say, okay, this is not for me. I don't want to do it. For example, I use social media only for my work. I don't, use it for personal. Some people might do for personal, but it is my view that I don't want to do it. So what I'm saying is the individual temperament, character, needs have to have a larger voice beyond technology. Definitely. So you may choose. So be. I think be. I think we have to be more alert to what we are doing. For example, when you're shopping, Google is telling you what you should be buying. So you have to say, hang on, no, I don't want this. I'm not looking for this. So rather than be blind to it, you have to be more alert, more conscious. It's difficult because there's so much.
The AI is playing with our mind, basically.
It will. We are playing with our own mind. AI is a reflection of our mind. Definitely. So it is our creation. It's not something that has happened without our input, and we are feeding it. We are feeding the data. We are feeding what we like because we want it to do all the boring jobs. So I think the times we live in, we should exercise some slow process. I think we should teach children how to cook, for example, themselves. Which is becoming more and more rare because of Swiggy, because of things, Zomato. You just order in food, and chill, and there's nothing. So many houses don't have a running kitchen now. So you see how the typology of living is changing. They hardly put the fire on for months, because food is being ordered. It's easy.
Like the bachelors, how they behave. Like everyone is going like in that manner.
Yeah. So, but now, everyone should know some cooking. I think it's important to be in touch with food and be in touch with what you eat and how it is cooked, because we saw that in COVID, no? We were up against a wall and no delivery systems. So
everything was shut down.
Everything was shut down, and it will happen again. So we have to remember those basic skills which keep us in touch with environment, with cooking, with survival, and then also there's a lot of joy in creating a good meal for the family. It's like architecture almost. You create something to enjoy together, and
Definitely.
that's a great unifier in a family as well. So slow processes, we need to consciously slow down at times, do some gardening, grow something, cook something, knit a sweater, those things. I think their value is now more and more acute. Than they're not going to disappear.
Definitely. So basically, with the final question I'd like to ask, like reflecting on that architectural education in India, what are the strengths areas of improvement in this sector, and what are the future trends and challenges in this sector, and especially architecture and design education globally? Um, the improvement architecture in India with comparison to education, the same education globally. What are the challenges?
Yeah, the challenges of the future, there are two parts of it. Challenges of the future and what India can offer, what India offers uh, in that in that field. Um, Challenges are huge, I think, as always. I think the social complexity, the unit nuclear family is changing. The idea of family is changing. It's no longer the time when even their parents, students think that we are going to get our education, have one house, one car, two children, one marriage, finish. That period is over. People are every 10-20 years, people are changing things, from families to jobs to situations to churning goes very fast. Actually, we're living 3-4 lives in a single life. So we're moving very fast. We are living longer and we're living more lives. So everything is like really concentrated. So challenges of architecture has to cater to that kind of complexity. It's a very exciting time because I think the idea of a 3 BHK typology is almost redundant. So each room is a bubble. Each room will have to be a bubble where you have living and working and almost like a mini hotel, right?
They want to experience each part of their room and all the things. They want to experience, make it more experiencing.
Exactly. So, and each person deserves that. Earlier, only the head of family will have a study. Now, the woman should also have a room of her own. The child wants a room of her own. The husband wants a room. If you want to live together, you have to have rooms of your own. It's getting difficult to also because personal aspirations, equality, sensitivity is grown. So, and also what has changed is our medical needs have changed. And I think in the future, we will have a medical room as part of one's home where you have the ICU kitted out. You have the oxygen and the drip and everything kitted out. So we might, what I think is that what is used in emergency becomes the norm after some years. So, we used to go for tests only, we used to go to a doctor only in emergency. I used to go to the hospital only in emergency. Now, some fever, you go to the doctor will say, get the test done. Blood test was only done in emergency. Now it's routine. For health insurance, you need test
When
done.
you go to a doctor, just first thing he will say, he or she will say, just take a blood test.
Yeah, take a blood test. And that was something that you would do only if you're seriously ill. I mean, I'm talking about 30, 40 years ago. Blood test was like, what has happened? Are
It
you
was a great deal.
hospitalized? It was a big deal. So even like how so many machines, blood pressure machine, sugar machine, all these are at home. Everybody has those machines.
It's just a
These
common
used
thing
to be. So I think next thing is have an ICU at home because the hospitals were overwhelmed during COVID. How to look after and also to look after our elderly, to look after people in these COVID like situations, even illnesses. Now, with virtual medicine available, I think there is a medicalization of architecture that is happening. And the gyms at home, the health thing is at home. So, the idea of home's changing. So, that's why I'm saying that the 3 BHK thing is totally outdated. Yeah, and some of my students do very interesting typology. I've done in very interesting typologies in the past where there is a sense of assisted learning, intergenerational living. How grandparents can engage with children of other people. They don't have to have their own grandchildren because so many people have moved abroad. So, but the need of an elderly person to engage with with children is very I mean it's present. So how do you do that? And it's good for the children, it's good for the elderly. So how do you make spaces which so those are the some of the, I mean, there are many more. Barrier free architecture is something we need to break. Boundary walls, make them more porous. Yeah, so I think those are the challenges and where the excitement lies as well. Materials is changing. Materials getting more biophilic, more kind of
eco-friendly,
less fossil based. But India, I think, has a huge role to play in this because we have a very strong India advantage. The strong India advantage is because we have values, we have social values, we have cultural, economic. Apart from economic, which is what most people judge anything by, is the economic value. But apart from the economic value, we have design value, we have social value, cultural value, so many other values that have equal role to play in anything of importance. Also, we have social complexity. I think we are a complex society. Many of the societies in the internationally, globally, are homogenized. They don't have so many differences, cultural and, like I said, cultural, religious, so many worldviews, and we coexist. We find a way of coexisting, and we have a lot of cultural wisdom. We are an ancient civilization. We often forget that we have so much thought process, so many scenarios that have happened in our country, and we can learn from so much history we have. I mean, we should be proud of it and using it in constructive ways, not in destructive. I mean, it can be used in destructive ways too, but we have a lot of wisdom in our land. And I think I've already spoken about geographical diversity.
Yes, Prabhav.
Within one political boundary, we have the mountains, we have the ocean. I'm near an ocean. There are mountains. There's a desert. There are forests. There are rivers.
There is a
There are
totally diversified land. We have multicultural things. And
within one country. You don't need a visa to reach the mountains. You don't need a visa to go to the ocean or to the. You can change your geographical location within 2 hours.
definitely.
It's mind blowing. I mean, we are so rich, and I think it teaches us ways of being in the world. I mean, there's so many worldviews in our country. There are sadhus who are living. There are monks. There are householders. There are industrialists. And these are all ways of existing in the world, and they're all valid ways. And with so much diversity, and also our literature, our philosophy, our languages. So a land that has so many languages is also a big asset, because the difference between egg and anda is huge. Bengalis call it deem, Hindi Sanskrit anda brahmand. It's such a fantastic concept. Egg is something else, but it also means anda. So what I'm saying is that access to language is also access to another way of thinking, another worldview. So there are so many idioms in different languages which teach you how to live, how to, give you wisdom, give you,
Definitely.
long view.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
ma'am. Thank you so much for taking your time, ma'am.
Thank you, Prabhav. Lovely talking to you.